Your
Senate, please return to order. We are in the midst of announcements. Are there any announcements? Senator from Bennington.
President, many people may wonder why we're passing over H-267. Quite frankly, there's been a number of inquiries, particularly from the Franklin County Probate Bar, concerned about the bill, and so I would ask that we pass it over again today, and the Judiciary Committee will take a look at some of the concerns of the probate bar that have been expressed about the bill. I know it's last minute and unusual, but I think we should hear from people who are in the business. So that's the reason for passing it over. It wasn't my absence last week. And I thank once again the Senate for its birthday wishes. The flowers were great. And I also want to thank Senator Kitchell for the wonderful birthday party. I didn't get to eat the truffle, but I watched everybody enjoy it, and that was worth the effort. And I'm sorry I wasn't there to enjoy it because it's a yearly event that I always look forward to. But the 80 candles was especially nice.
With that, are there any further announcements? Seeing none, we have a number of bills for referral appearing for notice. First being H-67, affecting the revenues of the state, will be referred to Committee on Finance. H-171, affecting the revenues of the state, will be referred to Committee on Finance. H-270, affecting the revenues of the state, will be referred to Committee on Finance. H-470, impacting the revenues of the state, will also be referred to the Committee on Finance. We also have H-31, affecting the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H-62, affecting the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H-77, affecting the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H-86, affecting the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H-291, affecting the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. And H-461, affecting the expenditures of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Good luck. We have two bills for referral having been originally sent to the Rules Committee. They have been discharged. The first being H-504. H-504 is introduced by Representatives Gosselin and Donahue. We've already heard the first reading of the bill, so it will be referred to the Committee on Government Operations. And H-505, also having heard it the first time, having been released by Rules, will be referred to Committee on Government Operations. We have joint resolution today for weekend adjournment, JRS 26. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
JRS 26, joint resolution relating to weekend adjournment. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that when the two houses adjourn on Friday, May 5, 2023, it be to meet again no later than Tuesday, May 9, 2023.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the resolution? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have adopted joint resolution Senate 26. We now have for introduction constitutional proposal number 3. Please listen to the purpose of the proposal.
Proposal 3, Section 1, Purpose. This proposal would amend the Constitution of the State of Vermont to provide that citizens of the state have a right to collectively bargain.
Now you've heard the reading of the purpose of the proposal and is referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. We have a Senate bill for introduction, S-152. It was introduced by introduced by Senator Sears. Please listen to the title of the bill.
S-152, an act relating to public access to trials.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That brings us to the orders of the day. And we are passing over, as earlier announced, H227. We're also going to pass over S48, which I believe brings us to H230. 230 was, third reading was ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading?
Mr. President,
Senator from Chittenden Central.
now the proper moment to answer a question, or should I do that when the question is, shall the bill pass?
I believe it would be shall the bill pass, would be the
Thank you.
proper time. Are there any amendments for H230? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H230, an act relating to implementing mechanisms to reduce suicide.
Now, you've heard the third reading of the bill, the Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators might remember that on Friday, my colleague from Washington, Senator Perchlik, had a question about a provision under Section 3. And just a reminder that those items in that subsection are moments where the criminal penalty would not apply. They are exceptions. And the one in question reads, a child or prohibited person accesses the firearm as a result of an illegal entry. And so there was some question about illegal entry and children. And so I spoke with Ledge Counsel about this. Eric Fitzpatrick was of the opinion that in the case of a child in the neighborhood who had at other times had access to the house, there would be implied consent if that child were to come in. And in that case, the criminal penalty would apply. There would be no exception, unless the child had been told that they could not come into the house, in which case it would be trespass. So in that case, it would be an illegal entry. But I believe the concern was that there would be a loophole under which children might access the gun, do something wrong with the gun, but no one would be held responsible. In this case, under the example that the senator stated, there would be no exception, and the firearm owner would be liable if they allowed a child who had otherwise had access to the house to gain access to the weapon. I hope that clears it up. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we heard some statistics on Friday about this bill. Over the weekend, I did a couple hours myself on statistics, and I just wanted to kind of point out how we were doing neighbors with our neighbors, New Hampshire and Maine to be to exact. And I found out using CDC sources and state sources, cross-referencing and just making sure that I was as accurate as possibly could be, because again, we are here to be accurate with our information. And I found out that Maine, using 2020 numbers, because anything further than that isn't reliable enough, Maine had 146 deaths by guns. That's 9.9 per 100,000. It's the 40th highest, which the higher you go is a good number. So basically, one of the eighth or ninth lowest for instances of gun deaths in the country. 89% of those are by suicides, 7% are homicides, where the country is 61% of deaths are by suicide with guns and 36% are homicides. From 2009 to 2018, gun deaths in Maine increased by 20% compared to 18% nationwide. Suicide rates increased by 27% compared to 19% nationwide. Maine has the 25th highest rate of gun suicides in the country. Maine has the 50th highest rate of gun homicides in the country, 57%, a little over half involve a gun compared to 74% nationally. New Hampshire's 143 gun deaths a year, 89% of those were by suicides, that's 9.5 per 100,000, 14th lowest gun death rate in the country. New Hampshire has the second lowest firearm homicides in the country. New Hampshire's gun deaths increased by 39% from 2011 to 2020 compared to 33% nationally in the same period, but their suicide rate increased by 61%. Vermont, using the same sources that I use right here, from 2011 to 2020, the rate of gun deaths in Vermont decreased by 1% compared to 33% nationally. Well, again, using 2020 statistics as close as I could find to reference, 75 people in the state die in Vermont by guns a year, and that puts us the 8th safest state in the country. An average of 66 people die in Vermont by gun suicide, a rate of 9.8 per 100,000, putting us between Maine and New Hampshire. An average of 30 people in Vermont a year are wounded by gun assaults, a rate of 4.8 per 100,000. Vermont has the lowest, has the 4th lowest rate of gun homicides in the country. It was also noted in several references that the solid statistics from 2020 to the present weren't available. They couldn't be accurate, but they a few of the things hypothesized that the areas that where police protection were diminished, that those numbers were expected to go higher. I've heard the talk of the bad things that happen in other parts of the country. Deaths are always regrettable, but it's not in Vermont. In the incident in Morrisville, thank God, a hero was there to intervene and go in there and force that person to flee versus to shelter in place and cause more damage. And that police officer hopefully will be recognized for their heroism of what they did to protect that community. There was an average of 37,600 gun deaths in the United States. 61% of them are suicides. They're all sad. There was also 106 deaths in the United States in 2021 from drug-involved overdoses. All sad and regrettable, but that's almost 3 times of what guns do to this country. But we don't do much to address that. I've lost 6 people in the last 30 years to suicide. One just a couple of years ago that actually worked for me. And he did it at my business, not because he was angry at me, but because he knew that I would take care of him. Out of the other 5, only 1 was a gun, so 4 were from other means, and all very, very sad and very, very raw to this day. When all this happened, I didn't blame the manner and the way they chose in their life. I blamed them some for not reaching out to me, and I blame myself for not recognizing the pain that they were in. Not one of the 6 gave notice, but it still to this day makes me anguish that maybe I could have done something. Vermont is a safe state, one of the safest in the nation, but we are under attack. We're not under attack by guns, but we're under attack every day with bills that propose and some passed into law that attack some of our most fundamental and cherished rights. Hunting, trapping, the right to bear arms, and others are attacking our right to live as we would like. S5 is one example of that. But there are also other pressures to ratchet up regulations of where and how we build our homes, how we subdivide our lands, how we manage our lands, and much, much more. All of them chip away at our freedoms slowly, slowly, slowly. There's a steady beat to an agenda that we aren't familiar with. I have to believe that the vast majority of Vermonters are starting to figure that out. In 18 months, they'll once again have their say, as they always do. And for that reason, Mr. President, for the 3rd reading on this bill, I would like to have a roll call, please. Thank you.
Roll call has been requested by the Senator from Essex. Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, I have not come easily to that S4 passes, which contained regulations on straw purchases and trading a crime. If S4 passes, which contained the defacing of serial numbers, becoming a crime in Vermont. If H230 passes, we will have a safe storage system similar to that in New Hampshire and Maine. I was opposed to safe storage. Felt it was like compost, and who's going to come and police my safe storage? But the way the bill developed in the Judiciary Committee, it provides for common sense, quite frankly. And if you aren't taking care of your firearm and something awful happens, there could be criminal penalties. So I support that. On the improvements to the so-called red flag law or extreme risk protection orders. Your Judiciary Committee put in a piece that requires clear and convincing evidence, which is the same standard that's used in the final hearing on whether or not the gun should be restricted. That's not unusual. There was a compromise reached when we first did that bill with the other body that created for the state's attorneys and others, a preponderance of the evidence. It wasn't by error that we didn't change that to clear and convincing. It was because that was compromised. I've been clear on the waiting period, but over the years, I've supported measures that keep firearms out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. And I think we'd all agree, young children shouldn't be possessing firearms, and that's part of the safe storage piece. I think we'd all agree that prohibited persons shouldn't be having firearms. So those 5 things are measures that this body has taken so far this year if H.230 passes. And I would add, Mr. President, that Vermont is not immune. The first workplace violent shooting happened in 1982 in Bennington, where a woman began to fire using a handgun and killed the plant manager at Eveready factory in Bennington, also wounding a close friend of mine. That was not an accident, Mr. President. That was a signal that Vermont is not immune from these things. And now we're seeing nationwide where a young girl has a basketball go across to her neighbor's lawn and shot. We see where somebody who asked somebody to please stop shooting at midnight in their yard, and I don't know all the details, goes in and kills 5 people. Mr. President, we have a crisis on our hands. What we're asking for here is not overly dramatic, in my opinion. Again, I didn't come easily to this position. I have opposed many firearm bills. I actually opposed S-55, which I sponsored and the governor signed, because I felt it went too far. So I'm not this person who looks at firearm safety and says, boy, we gotta do this, we gotta do this, we gotta do this. But we're at a point in this country where it's time to take a serious look at firearm violence. And S4 also contained a provision that's very important, in my opinion, to the Senate. And that is, if you commit a felony with a firearm, I don't care how old you are, you should be held accountable. People are shooting each other in Bennington. I ask you to join me after the session and the junior senator and take a tour of Pleasant Street and Depot Street and some of the other good streets in Bennington. Oh, the best one I heard was the cat fell out of the window and caused the firearm to go off, shooting about 20 times. Those are the types of things that are going on in Bennington. I don't know what's going on in Essex. I don't know what's going on in South Burlington or Burlington, but I do read the papers. And I do know what's going on in my community, Mr. President. And if we can do some measures here, which I don't think are overly burdensome on firearm owners, I think it's an important step for this body to take. And I hope you'll join me in voting yes on H.230. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
No.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt.
Yes.
Senator Hardy. Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Rashid.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
No.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
No.
Senator McCormack. Senator Norris.
No.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
No.
Senator Bohosky.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks.
No.
Senator Wesson.
No.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
No.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator Hardy. Senator McCormack.
Please list the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 19. Those voting nay, 9. And you have passed H230. We now have up for consideration H288. Third reading was ordered on H288. Are there any amendments to be offered before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H288, an act relating to liability for the sale of alcoholic beverages.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill, and the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H288. We now have up for consideration H479. Third reading has been ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H479, an act relating to the transportation program and miscellaneous changes to laws related to transportation.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. On second reading, there was a question about charging stations at multifamily houses, buildings that I wasn't really able to answer, and partly because there is nothing in the transportation bill about charging at multifamily